Alright, man, peace. Brothers, you ever have a male friend or family member who's always complaining about their relationship or their woman in some way, shape, or form, and you give them, some soothing words or advice or what have you, but you know in your heart that that relationship that he's in is best for him. The woman that he's with accommodates him and he accommodates her. They fit well together because their mindsets are on the same wavelength. That, in my view, is the current dynamic that exists between Kevin Durant and the Golden State Warriors. There's no doubt in my mind. They are the best place for him to be. He understands how they play. They understand how he plays. And I think that Kevin Durant is just one of those guys who does not like negative vibes. He does not deal with controversy particularly well. He's pretty much a go along to get along type of dude. And I think that their environment is perfect for him. So if he does leave Golden State, it's because somebody else has infiltrated his mind and made him think that in order for him to legitimize his career, he needs to go somewhere else and be a quote-unquote leader, which is something that he's not. Kevin Durant is not a leader. So if he were to leave Golden State to try to quote-unquote lead somewhere else, I think that it would be a major mistake for him. As it currently exists right now, he is without a doubt in my mind the greatest singular weapon in the history of the NBA. What do I mean by that? He's the greatest player to not be leadership material in the history of the NBA. I'm not even quite sure if there's a close second. I would have to go through the annals of NBA history to see. But I'm not quite sure if I can ascertain a greater player in the history of the league who was not a leader. Maybe Kareem, if you want to count him. Because, as we know, Kareem had issues winning championships or even advancing deep into the playoffs other than when he had Oscar Robertson or Magic Johnson. So maybe Kareem is the greatest player of all time who you would not consider a great leader. But Kevin Durant is certainly right there. Why am I saying all this? Because in the aftermath of Steph Curry's explosion against the Dallas Mavericks, Kevin Durant, in a post-game press conference, a post-game interview, I should say, he basically is going to let it be known why he knows in his heart, even though it might be subconscious, that he needs to stay in Golden State. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
All right, let's move on to the Warriors, where the Warriors and Mavs were tied at 114 with under a minute left in regulation. Kevin Durant deferred to Steph Curry multiple times on this possession, which ended with a Curry go-ahead three that ultimately won the game. Afterwards, KD explained why he wanted to get Curry the ball late in the game.
Let me say this very quickly as we watch that little interaction between Curry and Kevin Durant. That's the type of interaction that you see between two great players who both are very comfortable in their own skin, in their prime. They're both around 30 years old. And they know that they're not there to step on the other person's toes, and they're confident that the other player wants what's best for that other player and for the team. And that's just not something that Kevin Durant is going to be able to find anywhere else, at least not in my view. Even if he or his representation were to go to Golden State and say, you know what, we want to play in LA, we want to go play with the Clippers. In order for us to do that, we need you to agree to a sign and trade. And say, for example, Kevin Durant ends up in LA with the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard comes there. Is he going to be able to establish an equivalent rapport with Kawhi Leonard? Who knows? Kawhi does not seem to me to be the most open of books. So I think that sometimes people might believe that the grass is greener on the other side, or they might let certain sentiments from the media infiltrate into their subconscious mind. Kevin Durant has to be very, very careful because he already ran from a situation like this in Oklahoma City. And the more I watch Russell Westbrook, the more Kevin Durant's decision has proven to be more and more intelligent and insightful and prudent. Because Russell Westbrook is on his way down as a player. Mentally, he's starting to descend. There's no doubt about it in my mind.
In the game.
I always feel like I know I have a feel for the game, and I know I can see the flow of the game pretty easily. And he had mismatches. He was making shots over everybody tonight. So why even run plays? Just give him the ball.
Now, KD, where else are you going to go where you have that convention? Where you're widely considered, at the very worst, the second or third best player in the NBA. There are many cats out there who consider Kevin Durant the best player in the NBA. Where else is he going to go where he's going to be a part of a system and play alongside a player where he can say to himself, you know what, just give him the ball. Let's not even run any plays. That's how great he understands the system is that he's in and how much it amplifies what both he and Steph Curry can do.
So, Kevin, what did KD's comments about deferring to Curry there at the end of the game tell you about the relationship between the Warriors' two best players?
Oh, it doesn't tell you.
That means that they both know their role. They're very confident in what they do. They've already won 2 championships, so they know that what they do actually works on a macrocosmic scale. And they're both very secure in who they are as players.
It doesn't tell you anything about the relationship between Curry and Durant. It tells you everything about Kevin Durant's philosophy on basketball. May the hottest guy shoot. I mean, this is...
And that's all he's ever wanted. And that's the reason why he left Oklahoma City. Because Russell Westbrook always thought he was hot, even when he was 7 for 28. And that's what was so infuriating in Kevin Durant's mind about playing with Russell Westbrook. And when we look back at that Oklahoma City team, that team used to win 55, 57 games every season with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. But they could never get over the hump because their basketball IQ was so low, because their point guard, so-called point guard Russell Westbrook, is one of the most naturally gifted players to ever enter the NBA, but also has one of the lowest basketball IQs.
This is a window into the philosophy of Kevin Durant. I mean, you give the ball to the guy who's having the best game, and you let him work in isolation because he's a top 5 or 10 player. And it's something, I don't think this is a kumbaya, hey, you know, this is a deference so much as an expression of his philosophy.
I mean, out of every team in the NBA, they have the best understanding of that. Because just the other day...
Well, it's very easy to have the best understanding that you give the basketball to the hottest player when you also happen to have 5 all-stars in your starting lineup, when you have 2 of the top 3 best players in the NBA on your team. And then your third best player is Klay Thompson, and he might be a top 15 player in the NBA, depending on your personal preference of where you might want to rank him.
Today, you know, Klay goes off.
Right.
You know, and it's not going to be every night where the same guy goes off. So they have the best understanding of that, and that's why they're the best team in basketball, because of their unselfishness to go to the guy. Yeah, Durant has 25-plus points, but Curry, he's hitting 9, 10 threes.
Yeah.
Come on, it's your turn tonight.
But I also think there's a subtext here, which is Durant in his own way saying, hey, look, and when I'm that guy, I don't want to hear about system basketball.
Yeah.
Well, that's a part of it, but I think that Durant is confident that when he is hot, Steph Curry is going to give him the basketball. That's what's great about playing with Curry as opposed to Westbrook. Steph Curry is going to have far, far fewer of those 7 for 28 nights than a Russell Westbrook or even a Dame Lillard. And that's something that people heavily underestimate about Curry. If he's having a terrible season, he's going to shoot somewhere around 47, 48%. If he's having a great season, he's going to shoot somewhere around 50% for the year. Especially if he gets through the season mostly injury-free, he's going to shoot somewhere around 50%, which is very, very difficult for a predominantly perimeter player like a Steph Curry. But that's where he's going to be. Kevin Durant's also going to be around that area of proficiency in shooting from the field, and that's why they work so well together. Kevin Durant knows he can pass the basketball out to Steph Curry from 30 feet out, and that totally throws off the defense and forces them to recalibrate their approach.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about the little things that Draymond does.
Hot hand theory.
I want the ball. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what it's not even about that night. He wants to know, let's not talk about system when the guy's got it going.
Well, and there's this notion, right, that those two aren't necessarily gelling on the court all the time, right? That maybe Steph...
That notion comes from you guys in the media trying to break them up. That's where that notion comes from. Kevin Durant is not going to be able to find another team that will allow him to optimize his gifts as well as that team in Golden State. He can average 25 points per game there, shoot well over 50% from the field, and the pressure will never be solely on his back to win. It's always going to be a team pressure. If he goes to the Clippers, yeah, he could average 30 a game. They're going to win somewhere around mid-50s, maybe high 50s in wins in the regular season. But the pressure is going to be totally on his back. And I'm not quite sure if he's built for that, if he's somebody who really wants that. And he cannot allow himself to succumb to pressure from the media to make them happy. Because other people are never, ever truly happy. And you should never be concerned about the happiness of others. It has to be about the happiness of yourself and your loved ones. That's it. And if you're already good in Golden State, you might as well stay there. If you're not, then go ahead and move. But don't do so because of what the media is saying.
Steph has been marginalized some. Maybe he's taken too far a step back in this situation, because a lot of us believe that the Warriors are at their best when they're running the ball or the game through Steph.
They are at their best when they're running the game through Steph Curry. But Steph has not taken too much of a step back, no pun intended. He has not taken too much of a step back. He's still averaging somewhere around 27.5 points per game since KD arrived back in 2016. It's not like Steph has become some guy averaging 17 points a game. And this season, were it not for James Harden having the greenest light in the history of the NBA, Steph Curry would probably be leading the league in scoring. He's at about 30 points per game right now. James Harden somewhere in that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant range, 36 and a half points per game. Who knows how long that's going to last, especially once Chris Paul comes back. But right now, Steph Curry is definitely in that top 5 consideration for MVP. I don't think that he's going to get it, not unless he happens to lead the league in scoring. But his name is going to be mentioned.
So this is KD saying, okay, I'm willing to do that. I could be a team player and kind of dispel that.
I have a question for Paul. So what do you do when you're on a team with a really well-oiled system and you guys run stuff and it works, but there's a guy, like, how do you know when a guy is so hot that it warrants completely throwing away the book?
I mean,
when he's making all his shots, you idiot. I mean, how else would you be able to establish when a guy's hot? When he's making all his shots.
The numbers don't lie. We've been in that situation. I've seen Ray go off for like 50 points, and it was just a joy to watch. When you're a great player on a team and you didn't have those players, when you get those players, it's like, this is beautiful. He's taking so much pressure off me. Here, KG, it's your night. It's your turn to shine. He's hit 5 in a row. I'm just sitting back being a spectator, doing all the other things to help us because we realize that we have high IQs, and this team obviously has the highest IQ in basketball, and it's an honor to be a part of that and watch these guys on certain nights go off.
So let me ask you this. Did Steph kind of reemerge in the MVP race now?
Well, he never, I think, fell out.
He did a little bit. When he went out with that adductor injury, he fell out of the MVP race. So he's going to have to be exemplary down the rest of this season or down the course of the remainder of this season to have his name mentioned, because we know how the media is. They want to give the MVP award either to LeBron or somebody new. It's going to be very difficult for Curry to win a 3rd regular season MVP because, once again, that's going to put him in a stratosphere that is very, very rarefied. Now he's getting up in the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird stratosphere.
I know he was injured, and I know other guys emerged ahead, but he's still there because, for one, he's putting up great numbers, and at the end of the year, Golden State will have the best record in the Western Conference. So he never left the conversation. He's just still reminding people, I'm still here. I haven't went anywhere.
Yeah, as long as that games played number is at that threshold, he's well within the conversation.
Right.
And it's interesting, with each passing day that he plays in another game and the percentage of games he's missed goes down, we're going to see him rise up that rank. Because, I mean, look, at the end of the day, what has he missed thus far?
I think it's 11 games.
I mean, look, if he plays, let's say, 65, 66, 67, 68, I mean, I think he's going to be at the top of the heap.
Right, but in order for him to have a chance to win the MVP award, Antetokounmpo is going to have to fall off a little bit, and his team is going to have to fall off a little bit. Because right now, they definitely want to give him the award. A close second is going to be James Harden. If James Harden ends the season at 35, 36 points per game, they may give it to him. In order for Steph Curry to win a 3rd MVP award, a 3rd regular season MVP award, he's probably going to have to not only lead the league in scoring, his team's going to have the best record in the NBA. And Antetokounmpo may have had to have fallen off in some way, shape, or form, maybe miss a few games due to injury or what have you. So I just don't see it in the cards for Steph. But he's still my dark horse for MVP as long as he stays healthy.
Top of the heap.
Yeah, I'm with both of you. I happen to think that we try to find.
And also, of course, if CP3 comes back for the Rockets and James Harden's astronomical offensive numbers start to come down a bit, that will also give Curry a better chance.
Try to find reasons not to give guys who have already had multiple MVPs because we like the new shiny thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you do.
Yes.
And I think that because he's in that category now, that we're kind of trying to knock him down and be like, oh, Giannis, he's so great. And he is.
Some of you guys barely mention Steph Curry as a top 5 player. I've heard so-called NBA analysts on television say, well, Steph Curry is a top 10 player in the NBA. Top 10 player in the NBA. Steph Curry is arguably the best player in the NBA. I mean, from the outside. But arguably he is. He's certainly the most impactful player in the NBA in this current incarnation of how the game is played. He's even more impactful than James Harden. James Harden is just allowed to do whatever the hell he wants to on the floor. And because he gets those calls from the officials, it makes him even more potent. But when we talk about what a player brings to the table, it's Steph Curry, and then there's everybody else. He's changed the paradigm of how the game of basketball is played today. So not only is he a top 5 player, he's definitely top 3. And you could argue him as the best when you look at the success of his team, how he's changed the game, and the impact that he has every night. My list still to this day, is LeBron James number one, even though I know that it's very controversial with certain people. LeBron James is still the best player. Number two is Kevin Durant. Number three is Steph Curry. And it's more like 1A, and 1B. That's how close I think it is.
Yes. But we want to look for reasons, I think, not to give it to guys at certain points.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see what happens with KD in the offseason. We'll also see what happens with Steph Curry when it comes time for the quote-unquote MVP voting, which we all know is pretty much a popularity contest amongst the NBA media. So I don't think that Steph will win the award unless he just shines in a huge way. When it comes to the hierarchy of my top, say, 5 or 10 players in the league, I know that certain brothers find it to be relatively controversial. They want to put Kevin Durant as number one. I can't put him as number one when he is so eager to be deferential to Steph Curry on his own team. And he is yet to show that he can really be a leader on his own team. That's why I classify him as one of the great weapons in NBA history. But I can't classify him as the best player right now because he's not taking the bull by the horns. The Warriors are not his team. They're just not. So that's the conundrum for me in whether or not I should give him that title of the best player in the league. I can't do that because this is not his team. But anyway, peace.